Dirshu daf Yomi behalacha, daf Chaf Zayin Amud Bet, Siman Kuf Mem Daled, June 20th, Aleph Betamuz, Rosh Chodesh Betamuz, Chodesh Tov. Medalegin Seif Aleph, Medalegin Banavi, Ve'en Medalegin Batorah mi parasha zo leparasha acheret. When reading the Haftara, a person is allowed to skip from one part, from one section of the Navi to another section of the Navi. However, when reading from the Torah, the Kriat Hatorah, one may not skip from one section to another section. Vahani mili bishne inyanim. When may you not skip from one section to another section during Kriat Hatorah? That's if it's two different subject matters. Dehaishinan shema titbalbel da'at hashom'im. Why can you not skip from one section to another section if it's two different subject matters? Because we are afraid that those who are listening are going to get confused. Aval behad inyana. If you want to skip from one parasha to another parasha, meaning if you want to skip from one section to another question regarding the same subject matter, for example, kegon ahare mod ve'ach be'asor shekohen gadol kore beyom kippurim, regarding the Kriat Hatorah of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, that he reads from two separate sections. He reads from Aharemot, and he also reads from Ach Be'asor. Since they have to do with the same subject matter, Medalegin, one is permitted to skip from one subject matter to another subject matter, even for the Kriat Hatorah. As long as it has to do, one is allowed to skip from one section to another section, even in Kriat Hatorah, as long as it is the same subject matter. And one example of this is the Kriya of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, that he would read from two different sections. Why was he allowed to read from two different sections? One Aharemot and the other Ach Be'asod, because it was the same subject matter. Vehu shelo yikra al peh. This is on condition that he doesn't read it by heart. She'asur likrot shelo min haketav afilu teva echad. You are not allowed to read even one word by heart. Ubanavi medalegin afilu bishne inyanim. However, when reading the Haftara, you are allowed to skip from one section to another section, afilu bishne inyanim, even if it's two different subject matters. Vehu shelo yishhe bedilug be'inyan sheyamdu ad tzibur b'shtika. However, there is a condition. You are allowed to skip from one section to another section in the Navi, even if it's two different subject matters. However, when you are in the process of skipping, it should not take you, the time it takes you to skip should not be to the point that the tzibur is waiting quietly for you to get to the other subject matter, to the other section. It has to be done very quickly as you skip from section to section. It cannot be done, it should not be done to the point that while you're skipping from one section to another section that people are waiting. It has to be done in a very quick manner. Vahani mili benavi ehad. When are you allowed to skip from one section to another section in the Haftara? When it's two different subject matters. That's if you're still within the same Navi, the same prophet. Aval minavi le Navi, but to skip from one prophet to another prophet and medalegin. You cannot go from one prophet to another prophet in the Haftara. You have to stick within the same prophet. Ubitre asar in sefer tre asar medalegin minavi lenavi ubilvad shelo yedaleg misof hasefer litchilato. However, when you are in the sefer, in the book of tre asar, you are allowed to skip from one section to another section, even if it means going from one navi to another navi, as long as you don't skip, as long as you don't go backwards. For example, you don't go from the end of the Sefer back to the beginning of the Sefer. You may not go in reverse, you may not go backwards. However, you are allowed to skip forwards in Tre Asar, even from Navi to Navi. Let's see the Mishnah Brura. Banavi, Hainu lefi ma sheyadua demidina en al haftara banavi pesukim meyuhadim. Why are you allowed to skip from one section to another section in the Haftara? Because there's not really, al pi halacha, Al pi hadin, there's not really any specific pesukim that you have to say. Rak shetzarich liyot me'en hasidra. When the Haftara has to be similar, it has to be similar, the same subject matter as the parasha. Once again, there's not specific pesukim that we have to read. There is no din, there is no halacha that we have to read specific pesukim each week. However, it just has to be of the same subject matter as the parasha. Therefore, when it comes to the Haftara, we are allowed to skip. We're coming to learn that you are allowed to skip from one section to another section in the Navi. וכן המנהג בכמה הפטרות שמוסיפים להם פסוקים מפרשיות אחרות. And this is the minhag that we have. It happens a number of times throughout the year that we add on pesukim to the Haftara. We have the Haftara and we add on some pesukim from other sections of the Navi. ואין מדלגין בתורה, היינו בשני וחמישי דצריך מדינה לקרוא רק 10 פסוקים לתלת הגברה. Regarding on Monday and Thursday, that min hadin we need to read at least 10 pesukim broken over 3 people, scattered over 3 people. או ביום טוב דצריך לקרוא ה' גברה, אין לקרותם לכתחילה bedilug rak kaseder. Lechatchila, you may not read them by skipping. It has to be read in order. Shema titbalbel. Lefi shedivrei Torah divrei azharot ve'onashin umitzvot. The divrei Torah are words of warnings, of punishment, and of commandments. Betzarish yikansu belev hashom'im, and it has to go into the hearts of the people who are listening. Ukshe'adam yotzeh mishita leshita, if you start going from one area, from one matter to another matter, a person does not have time to reflect. He doesn't have the peace of mind to reflect. Mashe'en ken banevi'im. Kegon acharei mot ve'ach be'asor. Rotze lomar af al pi sheyesh hefsek rav benehem. Why is it that the Kohen Gadol is allowed, that we say that you are allowed to go from section to section as long as it's the same subject matter? What's the example? The Kriat of the Kohen Gadol in Parashat Acharei Mot and Ach Be'asor. Rotze lomar af al pi hefsek rav benehem, even though there's quite a large interruption in between them, those 2 sections are not beside each other. Shezeh beParashat Acharei v'zeh beParashat Emor. One is in Parashat Haremot and one is in Parashat Emor. Afilu hache keman detarvayu me'inyan Yom Kippurim. But since they are both of the same subject matter, they are both discussing Yom Kippur, mutar ledaleg velikrotam yahad. You are allowed to skip and then read them together. Vehu hadin ma shenoagim beta'anit tzibur. We do the same thing by a ta'anit tzibur. Keshekroim vayhal beParashat Tisa, that we begin with the pasuk Vayhal in Parashat Kitisa, shemedalegin lepesol lecha, and then we skip all the way to pesol lecha. V'hainu gamken, it's the same idea. V'hainu gamken mitam sheminyan echad, because once again they are the same subject matter. The Mishnah Berurah is elucidating what the Shulchan Aruch says, that even though you are not allowed to skip from section to section in Kriat Hatorah, however, if it's of the same subject matter, one is allowed to do that. Vehu shelo yikra. You're not allowed to read it by heart. Rotze lomar delekach hitiru ledaleg veliglol hasefer leparasha hashniya, av tehu min karmilte, kedeh shelo yavo likra shniya ba'al peh, veze asur. What's the Shulchan Aruch coming to teach us here? Why did they allow us? Why did they permit to skip and to roll the Sefer Torah to the second section, to the other parasha? In order that the person doesn't come to read it ba'al peh. We don't want this person reading it by heart because it's asur to read it by heart. Shelo yishhe bizmanehem. But however, there's a condition. The time that it takes for you to skip, there should not be an interruption where people are sitting there quietly and waiting. Bismanehem hayu regilim letargem ben pasuk lepasuk. In olden times, in the times of the Gemara, they used to translate each pasuk, meaning there would be a Baal Koreh who's reading the Torah, and there was a Meturgeman. The Meturgeman would translate each pasuk. והשמועין שיהיו קרובים העניינים זה לזה כל כך, עד שלא ישהה הדילוג יותר מכדי שיפסוק התורגמן. These two sections, when you're skipping from one section to another section, they should be so close that there should not be enough time for this, that the skipping, there should not be enough time that the translator, the Meturgeman, has concluded translating the pasuk, and he's just waiting there. The people are just waiting there. She'en kavod latzibur sheyamdu bishtika v'yamtinu. It is not the kavod, it is not honorable for the tzibur to be quiet and just to wait. V'katvu haposkim, debizmanenu she'en regilim letargem nami shari. In our times, that we don't have a meturgeman, we don't have a translator, it's still, we don't have a person who's translating each pasuk, so we don't have that brief window to skip from section to section. Regilin letargem, it's also permitted. Kevan shekol haftarot ketuvim bizmanenu bekuntris bifnei atzman, since the haftarot are written in their own booklet, or behumashim, or they're written in the humashim. We're talking about now when you want to skip from within the Haftara. Since the Haftarot are written in a booklet, or they're written in humashim, halo yachol lesamenu l'chapes maher kol hapesukim hashayar shrim l'Haftara zo. You can easily make a sign and be able to turn the pages quickly to all the pesukim that have to do with this Haftara. ולא יהיו הציבור צריכים לעמוד בשתיקה על ידי זה, and the tzibur will not have to wait quietly because you're skipping from one section to another section, because before you begin you could very easily put some kind of sign, something to tell you that this is the page you have to skip to. Since it can be done so easily and there's no need for the tzibur to wait, levelachen shari, therefore even in our times it is permitted. ומיטעם זה מותר בזמננו אפילו כשפסוקים הם משני הנביאים. The Mishnah Berurah adds, for the same reason, even when the pesukim are from two different nevi'im, you are allowed. Va'afilu rachokim ze mize harbe, even if they are very far. Why? Because since it's a booklet, since it's a chumash, since it's written as a sefer, you can very easily find the pesukim. By putting a sign, you can find the pesukim and easily skip and easily turn the pages to that other section. And medalegin, aval minavi lenavi and medalegin, to go from to skip from a section in one prophet to a section in a different prophet in the Haftara, that we don't do. Di'ika teruf hada'at beyoter midai vedavka bishne inyanim, because this is already a bit too confusing. This is a bit too overwhelming. However, vedavka bishne inyanim, this is specifically when it's two different matters. Aval beinyan ehad, according to the Pri Chadash, if it's one matter, if it's one subject matter, you still are allowed to skip from navi to navi. Ubitre asar shehem hashuvim kenavi echad leinyan zeh. As far as our halacha is concerned, in Sefer Tre Asar, all the nevi'im that are brought there, it's all considered like one navi. Because it's all very short. Each navi is very short in Sefer Tre Asar, therefore you can skip from one navi to another navi. Lithilato, רוצה לומר לצד תחילתו שהוא למפרע. What does the Shulchan Aruch want to say? ובלבד שלא ידאג מסוף הספר לתחילתו, that you're not allowed to go backwards. Even if you are allowed to skip under certain circumstances, you're not allowed to reverse, you're not allowed to go backwards. Vafilu hem semuchim ze lazeh. Even if the two sections are very near each other, you are not allowed to go backwards when skipping. You're only allowed to go forwards, but not backwards. Vehine yesh deot ben haposkim. And the truth is that there are a number of opinions amongst the poskim. Yesh omrim de dafka minavi lenavi en medalegin bazeh. Vafilu benavi shel Tre Asar. Some want to say that specifically when you are skipping from one navi to another navi, you may not go backwards. You may not go in reverse. Vafilu benavi shel Tre Asar. Even In the Navi of Trei Asar and Sefer Trei Asar, you may not skip and go backwards. Aval benavi ehad medalagin afilu lemafreya. But within the same Navi, if you're reading the Haftara from a certain, let's say from the Sefer Yirmiyahu, within the same Navi, you are allowed to skip, and you're even allowed to go backwards. Imhem, meaning that you're in one section of Yirmiyahu, and then after you finish that section, you're allowed to go to a section that comes before it and read Pesukim from that section. Imhem semuchim, velo yitztachu hatzibur lamod bishtika. As long as they're near each other, and the tzibur doesn't have to wait there quietly. V'amagen Avraham mitzaded v'chen pasak b'Eliyah Rabbah de'afilu benavi ehad en ledaleg lemafreya. And then there are those opinions that even within the same Navi, you are not allowed to skip going backwards. However, the Pri Megadim is of the opinion that as long as it is within the same subject matter, you are allowed to skip and go backwards. Nohagin vechulu. Let's go to Seif Bet. Nohagin b'Shabbat sheyesh bo hatan lomar achar haftarat hashavua shnayim o shlosha pesukim haftarat sos asis. There are those that have the custom. There are those that have the minhag, that when there is a hatan, that sheyesh bo hatan, to say the haftarah after concluding the haftarah on a Shabbat where there is a hatan in the Bet Knesset, after concluding the haftarah, to add in 2 or 3 pesukim from a different haftarah, from the haftarah of Sos Asis. U'shechal Rosh Chodesh b'Shabbat u'vyom Aleph, and also when Rosh Chodesh falls on Shabbat and Sunday, the first day of the week, 2-day Rosh Chodesh, achar shemaftirin haftarah b'Shabbat, after concluding the haftarah of Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh, omrin pasuk rishon upasuk acharon mihaftarat vayomer lo Yonatan machar hachodesh. Since tomorrow's also Rosh Chodesh, it's not only Rosh Chodesh on Shabbat, it's Rosh Chodesh on Sunday. The minhag is to say, not only to say the Haftarah of Shabbat Rosh Chodesh, but to add in the first and the last pasuk of the Haftarah vayomer le Yonatan of machar hachodesh, what you would say on Shabbat, that's Erev Rosh Chodesh. Then limchot beyadam, and people who have this minhag, we do not protest this minhag. Nohagim vechulu v'ta'am haminhag av dekama pe'amim mitrami shehu minavi lenavi. Even though this minhag of when there's a hatan, that after the haftarah we add in 2-3 pesukim from the haftarah of Sos Asis, the reason for this minhag, even though that many times it's going to happen, that means you're going from Navi to Navi, which is not allowed. Mishum debimeha Talmud ayo kol asfarim nichtavim begilayon vayu tzrichim lishot beglila. What was the problem in the time of the Gemara if they wanted to do such a thing? The problem was that all the Sfarim were written as scrolls. So you would have to scroll from one place to another, and which would make an interruption. But in our times, that the Haftarot are written in booklets, or bechumashim, he can beforehand, he can just make a sign for himself in order to find those pesukim that he wants to add on easily, and therefore that's why it's permitted. Omrim pasuk rishon. Why is it that we say the first pasuk and the last pasuk of the haftarah that we usually say when Erev Rosh Chodesh falls out on Shabbat? Why do we say the first and last pasuk? Lezecher shelemachar hu Rosh Chodesh, in order to be reminded that tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh. V'ayin lekaman siman tav chaf hey hainu desham nitbar dekayom en nohagim ledaleg minavi lenavi klal. We will see over there, it says in the Shulchan Aruch, V'ayin lekaman siman tav chafei seif bet ubsof siman tav chafchet ha'ech nohagim. The Rama writes, Mishnah Berurah writes, that over there, the Rama writes that today, the minhag is not to skip from one Navi to another Navi at all. Seif Gimel, En golelin sefer Torah betzibur mipnei kavod hatzibur. We do not start to roll the sefer Torah B'tzibur when we're reading it because of the kavod of the tzibur. V'im en lahem ela sefer Torah echad. If there's only one sefer Torah, v'hem tzrichim likrot b'shnei inyanim. and they need to read from two sections, meaning they really need two Sifrei Torah, Golelin, and in that case, we do roll the Sefer Torah, and we push off, the kavod of the tzibur is pushed off. Let's see exactly what this means in the Mishnah Brura, and Golelin, ובשבת שקוראים בשני ספרי תורה, יכולים לגלול אחת בעוד שקוראים הראשונה. Let's say on Shabbat, it's a Shabbat where we have to take out two Sifrei Torah. And for whatever reason, the second Sefer Torah was not rolled to its proper place, that you are allowed to roll it while they're reading the first Sefer Torah. ויותר טוב כמו שנוהגים עתה, שגוללין ומחפשים בעת שאומרים הקהל פסוקי דזמרה, כמו שכתב בדרכי משה. However, the best is, the Mishnah Berurah says the best is that while the tzibur is saying pesukei tezimra, that's when the Sefer Torah should be rolled. In other words, that the Sefer Torah should always be rolled and ready before we need to use it. Not that as we need to use it, that's when we need to roll it to the correct place. מפני כבוד הציבור, שיהיו מצפים ודוממים לכך. בשני עניינים, כגון בשבת של ראש חודש או ביום טוב מפני המפטיר, גוללין וידחה. רוצה לומר, ולא אמרינן דמשום זה יקרא פרשה של המפטיר בעל פה או בחומש. We don't say, for example, in a situation where you have two Sifrei Torah, and the second Sefer Torah was not rolled. Even though there's kavod hatzibur, over here the kavod hatzibur is pushed, and we roll the second Sefer Torah. And we don't come to a situation to think that no, since the second Sefer Torah is not rolled, we're not supposed to roll it. Rather, we will read it by heart. ולא אמרינן דמשום זה יקרא פרשה של המפטיר בעל פה או בחומש. Don't come to say, okay, so I'll read the parasha of the maftir by heart, or I'll read it out of a chumash. We can assume that the tzibur is mohel, they forgive their kavod in order to read the kriat, the kriat of the maftir properly. Bezrat Hashem, Rabotai, we will continue tomorrow.